But this is someone who's circulating the statement for signatures. She asks, can you say what you hope to accomplish with the statement the Schiller Institute issued, the urgent appeal by citizens and institutions from all over the world to the next president of the United States? What is the intent of circulating that?
Well, on the 10th of June is the 60th anniversary of the famous speech by John F. Kennedy in the American University, which is generally called his peace speech. And if you haven't done that yet, you should read that speech or even listen to him on YouTube, because it is a beautiful speech where Kennedy, says that the world needs peace coming from America, but not a Pax Americana, where the United States would enforce with weapons, to submit all others and that way have a piece of the graveyard, but to have a peace, basically where each country can flourish and work together. And it's a very beautiful poetical speech. And, it is so important that people listen to that speech. There are also other incredible speeches by Kennedy. For example, one on where he talks about the importance of art and culture, which I can only underwrite every word he is saying there, that it is the culture of a country which is what makes it human and what makes it beautiful. So, first of all, many young people have no real idea who Kennedy was, because they're born long, long after he has been assassinated, and therefore they don't have a vivid idea anymore that he represented a completely different paradigm of American politics. And this is very important because, what I want to accomplish with that is, as I mentioned before, we are in an unbelievable historic transformation right now, of which people in the West are hardly aware. The global South is shifting. First of all, they have a completely new self-assuredness. They have the economic ties, especially with China, but also, with among each other, Brazil, India, Indonesia. These are all major countries who are now rising. And, the danger would be that the West remains arrogant and, basically says, who are these people from the South? They should be submitting to the unipolar world, because they will not. And it would be very dangerous if you would have a complete separation into two blocks, a Western bloc and a bloc, Russia, China, the global South, because, if you can't solve the problems of the world by this separation. And if, the dynamic would continue, that it would all turn anti-American, which is clearly a tendency because, the United States, there was just a report by one of the American universities. I forgot which one. Harley, if you know it, you can fill it in later. And they made a study and they said that the interventionist wars in which the United States was involved after 9/11 resulted in 4.5 million deaths. Now that is an unbelievable figure. And naturally there are many people in the global South also who are not exactly friendly to the United States, and that's probably an understatement of the year. And it would be very devastating if that would remain like that, because I think that if that is the tendency, World War III is unfortunately very likely down the road or sooner or later. So, since Kennedy represents a completely different paradigm of American politics, more like it was meant to be with the founding fathers, the American Revolution, the War of Independence against the British Empire, John Quincy Adams' conception of foreign policy, Lincoln, Franklin D. Roosevelt, and then Kennedy, who, after all, diffused the Cuban Missile Crisis together with Khrushchev, and who had a very optimistic idea about the ability of man to solve any problems through science and technology. So it's a different paradigm. And, by, making this appeal, by basically saying, that what the whole world wishes is that the United States would go back to that kind of a paradigm which Kennedy represented. I think that first of all, it will help to educate people around the world to look at the United States in a more differentiated way. And hopefully inside the United States also causes Americans to review their own history. Because as my late husband, Lyndon LaRouche, emphatically always said, that things went wrong with America after the assassination of Kennedy, and especially the cover-up through the Warren Commission. Because if you assassinate the president of a country, which obviously, the lone assassin theory does not hold for 1 minute, and then you have a cover-up, and the institutions of that country are not able to, to remedy that or to find out the truth and find justice. This is extremely, this was a break in the history of the United States. And, the last 50, now 60 years, almost 60 years, that is something one has to work through and find back to the kind of values which existed with Roosevelt, with Kennedy. And I think that that's the purpose. And I always, think one should relate to the best tradition of the other and not the worst. When I founded the Schiller Institute in 1984, the main purpose was to contribute to a just new world economic order, and the idea that this is only possible if one has a renaissance of classical culture and a dialogue of the best traditions of all cultures, with the idea that peace is really possible when you relate to the best of the other person or the other country or the other tradition, and vice versa, because then you bring forward what is good in the other, and that is the basis for peace. So I hope that with that, and the memory comes back, that America should become again a force of good in the world, and then the whole world would be peaceful and happy.